Bell is a bell because it's hollow, precisely because it's not solid. It's empty in the core. Gives forth a resonance based on its structure of hollowness at its core. It's struck externally and it's struck internally, you could say. The resonance is a result of the sound traversing from one side to the other and back, reverberating, bouncing back and forth. Until the reverberations settle. It's a good metaphor for life, for our life, for this internal experience. Is it human necessarily, or is it just structure? We're built hollow. We're built around the feeding tube, a mouth that goes down to the anus, opens up to the earth. Our arms and our limbs are built around this, our organs. Food is essential to life. Our structure is the intake and outtake of food substances. But as a structure, setting food aside, we're hollow in that core. We investigate suffering is what we're doing now. A lot of suffering comes from the images we repeat to ourselves that we don't question. We have it carry an image of who we are. Can you see that now? Can you call an image up for yourself? How does that image appear now after doing this exercise of the hollow core? It might feel lighter or different. It might allow you to take a step back from that image. It might suddenly appear as it is, a ghost or phantom in the mind. It's useful We want to maintain that. And it's not who we are. It's just a random image. It's never the same. It changes from the last time we saw ourselves in the mirror, from how we felt into any pleasure or pain or neutrality arising. We've assigned it a location on that image and given it solidity, but it's just no more than real than trying to paint a flat image with red paint and green paint and blue paint on to reality. It's our mind's attempt to project something, and as any projection, it's a futile attempt. The Buddha taught this through laughter, to help people see into the deep nature of perception and labeling, mental images. No mental map is reality. It's just an altered attempt at reality. It comes out of control, desire to control and manage suffering. So it comes from compassion and wisdom. But without investigation, in the quiet silence of this morning hour, can also become a source of suffering. I hope you all can see that or sense into this orientation, this direction we're pointing in this morning. I'm just asking you to take a step back from assumptions we make. The investment we have in a self comes from an investment or a reliance on an incomplete description, and we invest it. With a way to control reality. It's just a bet that we've made, we've been taught to make in life. People's mental images don't age sometimes. They reject the wrinkles on their face, and people often carry around a younger version of themselves. It's not a bad thing. I never see my face anyway. I'm just trying to get you to see that the real crux of suffering really lies in perception. You may have a perception that this image never ages, that it's somehow permanent. We call that a distortion, a vipallasa in Pali language. There are distortions of views that this self is permanent, that it's not subject to suffering, that it is a self in control, and that's worth investing in as a controller. We come in silence This beautiful, crisp morning. We investigate this internal reverberation. We may have been struck in life by life, and our response is inevitably to invest in a self, to pull back, to protect. But we pull back in ways and using means that are not in line with reality. That's why waking up is just investigating what's in line with reality and what's not. What's not is how we go about propping up this self. We create an eternalistic view that this self is somehow eternal, that its likes and dislikes will never change, that there's some centrality to this experience. Self wants a grand cosmic design for itself. Doesn't want to look at the view that reality is just happening, that change is inevitable. It sees the need for escape, that it's not permanent, but it wants to manage it still. It wants to create a step-by-step path. You can see it now. Who's breathing? Who's sitting? Actions are happening and rehappening according to causes we can't fathom or understand, complexity, and yet there's a self that's always saying after the fact, I did that. It was I that decided to sit you down. It was I that decided to remain seated. It was I. Look at that I. Where do you feel the deepest sense of an I? Where do all the arrows point? If you ask yourself that 1,000 times today, you think the answer will change? It will. Sometimes it point to the head, to the heart, to what's hurting in the body, drawing attention. We don't control that attention. Sometimes attention just goes to where sensations are predominant in that moment. We're not the one in control of attention. Who's controlling the answer? Where am I? Is there a point in this bodily experience that stands out? Look for it. If you find it, go there. What do you find when you arrive? Do you find solidity? Or is that just a thought? A sense of changing pressure? Or a slow point where the change in pressure is not noticeable? You feel the pressure building on the in-breath and releasing on the out-breath. Those are bodily functions. How can we claim pressure? Before we were born, there was pressure, air pressure, internal pressure. After we die, there will be pressure. What about the movement, the stillness, sense of warmth, coolness? What about just that neutral sense of tingling? Doesn't need you to say, I'm here. It's just a thought. There is a deep layer of sensation. And there's an awareness already there. It doesn't need a body, somehow independent of arm and leg. And investigate, it's the same everywhere. Even feels external to the body. There's no shape in this internal field of sensation that corresponds to exactly the body. If you look at it in detail, it's constantly popping like bubbles, as the Buddha said, on a stream. That's really our deepest sensory field. What the thought, this is my arm, refers back to. And it's what refers back to the thought, this is my arm. It's a cyclical loop. And as such, together, they're empty. They depend on each other. They're codependent, arising. It's a feedback loop that creates a sense of self that is otherwise empty. So the question is, why do we go to so much trouble to fabricate sense of self out of these trillions of complex processes going on at all times? These interactions between a fabricated label, image, fabricated thought about their connection, constantly connecting the dots and tying things together from a dispersed reality across multiple senses. Can we live without tightness, with an awareness of this fabricated nature that does not deny it, doesn't sweep it under the carpet, where we can live free, ultimately? We can live as the bell with an empty core and see the beauty in that feedback loop, not its reality denying aspects, tending towards more solidity and more suffering. This is my suffering. When we see this, we see how we fabricate. We're in collusion. We're in cahoots, as my parents used to say. We're in cahoots with our own suffering, unawares. It's just a little change in perception. That's waking up. The first characteristic of reality, impermanence, and the second of suffering really are just feeding tubes to relax into a sense of a constructing, fabricating machine, a self-making mechanism. It's just one we've learned and not questioned. We pull the veil, take the curtain down at, on the Wizard of Oz, see behind the machinery of self-making. May seem disorienting at first, and so path of awakening can be frightening for some. It might not be for you. Don't expect it to be. But it's also normal if it is. And that fear is generated by a self that believes it's essential. And so we have to question our views about the self. We assume the screams of the self of bloody murder are correct, and that we can't live without this self-making machinery. So in your own way and in your own time, gently, gently, you will see this in your own time and in your own way. It'll be very unique to you. It'll dawn on you at some moment. If you're here and you're listening to me, I think you all have a suspicion that what I'm saying is true. Let it be the awakening force. You don't have to do anything except choose to see, energetic, clearly observant, and mindful of this as we just read in the definition of right mindfulness, setting aside liking and disliking with reference to this world. And we just stay the course. We don't mix up our groundings of awareness. We refer, when we're in the body awareness, we refer to it as body awareness. It's our frame of reference. Without reference to feeling, we see that they're each empty. They depend on each other. Emptiness here is just choosing to see the machinery that's connecting the dots between the apparent solidity of the body and the floaty, vibrating groundlessness the airy sense of the internal body that's always there, and the labels that try and connect to, and the thoughts and the fabricating. Rest the mind with the in and out breathing. The empty core of the lungs, like the empty core of the bell. Really generate this internal sensory field of awareness. Breath reverberates, sense of awareness of here. It's only because it was struck by the in-breath or struck by the out-breath. It's dependent on being struck by the breathing apparatus, which we didn't create. Breath is in-breath is empty because without the out-breath, the in-breath wouldn't exist. It's dependent. It has nothing to do with our wanting and not wanting. It itself is free of suffering. There's nothing to cling to. There's no person here to build, construct. An awareness. It's intimately colored by whatever's happening. That awareness arises and dies and passes away, and a new one rebuilds. Because it's intimately connected with a label, with an attempt to connect the dots. It's just part of our physiology. It's more like an attempt at saying here, here, here. So this is a really deep layer where the self can hide. Look for the awareness that is beyond and separated, untouched by any labels or sensations. We initially escape our sense of self into a container, a spaciousness, or a witnessing container. Isn't that also fabricated? But it's a fabrication that softens with a grosser, less subtle sense of self. So that's the path we take. We take path to through subtleness. It's a gentle path. This is a paradoxical path. We have to walk into and challenge our perceptions of reality. Initially, we see everything as separate and disconnected, but paradoxically, it leads to the most intimate connection we can ever find, satisfying wholeness. We can rest at any point of contact and not cling to it. As we've opened up, we've seen that we can live in openness and not hiding in tightness. For some, this will bring up areas in our life where we're hiding. And it's people run from meditation, run from awakening. They don't want to look at those areas. And there's little openness. And that's why we need friends and perseverance and reassurance. We're not doing it so we can't stop this process. Life is going to teach us these lessons anyway. This is just a way to be in line with reality. We learn that these are our gifts, these areas where we feel tight, emotionally hurt. It's the portal to awakening. It's our unique path. And when we liberate that small sense of a small self that's being constructed in a tight loop, we liberate. We liberate that potential in others. We become a leader with respect to that freedom. Just in our way of being, we don't have to point and direct and teach. We show liberation in our spirit. Teach through our mirror neurons. Awakening is a resonance. This looks like a teaching. This Robert looks like a teacher. It's just reality showing itself. When we connect here, we connect as one. And that's where we feel that warm radiance in the heart. We don't necessarily build metta or loving kindness on top of with the self. It's through deconstructing the self that we find the metta, an infinite expression of goodwill and freedom from suffering. It's already there. It's already operating. It's through wisdom that we find our greatest heart qualities. Not letting go, but letting be. Not altering reality with our perception. Embracing that emptiness is our core. When we see this, we see and know freedom at last. Freedom at last. And the heart soars. And there's just this. The heart surrenders as true freedom, as it recognizes itself here. And that reality can be trusted. It's nothing to protect. There's no ego to protect. We don't have to pull back from reality to manage it. It's affirming. We sometimes walk through a path of distinction. This is not self. This is not self. But we arrive at just this, affirming this present moment as it is, without fabrication. This is my gift. This is my medicine that I'm offering today for my own path of suffering and through suffering. Take it as you wish. Find your own way and teach others through your dignity and strength, perseverance, patience, and surrender, finding the deep wells of love within you. We walk through our suffering like invisible walls. We're survivors, all of us. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful.